The moment consciousness understands the quantum field is not a moment of learning. It is a moment of recognition. And recognition does not add something new. It collapses what was already waiting. This is the instant where probability stops behaving like a spectrum and resolves into a line. Not because effort was applied, but because identity snapped into coherence. This is the point where timelines do not slowly rearrange themselves. They fold. They converge. They finalize. Most people believe understanding is cumulative. That awareness grows in steps. That reality changes gradually as knowledge increases. But the quantum field does not respond to accumulation. It responds to state. And the state that collapses a timeline is not intellectual clarity, but existential recognition. When you see something as true at the level of who you are, the field has no choice but to respond. This is not mysticism. This is structure. Before this moment, you exist in superposition. Multiple versions of your life remain available, not because you are choosing them consciously, but because your identity is undefined. The field keeps options open when coherence is missing. But the instant consciousness understands its relationship to the field, ambiguity ends. The observer is no longer searching. The observer knows itself. And when the observer knows itself, selection becomes automatic. This is why this understanding feels irreversible. You cannot unknow what you recognize. You cannot return to pretending you are separate from the field once you see that reality is responding to you continuously, not occasionally. From this point forward, contrast accelerates. Feedback sharpens. Synchronicity intensifies. Not as a reward, but as a consequence of coherence. This is also why forcing never works at this level. Force assumes separation. It assumes something must be pushed into place. But recognition dissolves the distance that force depends on. When consciousness understands the field, it realizes there was never anything outside of itself to control. The attempt to manipulate reality falls away, not because it is wrong, but because it is unnecessary. Timelines collapse because indecision ends. Not mental indecision, but identity indecision. The field is not confused about what you want. It is responding perfectly to what you are. And the moment you see this, the game changes. Waiting loses its meaning. Effort loses its leverage. The present moment becomes heavy with consequence, because now awareness is stable enough to select. This is why this message does not feel like information. It feels like a remembering. Something in you already knows this. And that knowing is not passive. It is active. It is instructive. It is already reorganizing how reality meets you. This is the threshold. Not a beginning, but a lock-in. If you are aligned with this frequency, subscribe and remain within it. Observation is never neutral because consciousness is not a camera. It is not a passive lens pointed at an external world. The act of noticing is already an instruction. The moment awareness rests on something, potential reorganizes around that focus. This is not philosophy. It is function. Reality does not wait for action to respond. It responds to attention first. Most people assume outcomes are shaped by what they do. But long before action occurs, something quieter has already selected the path. Where attention lingers, probability condenses. Where attention withdraws, possibilities dissolve. This is why two people can stand in the same circumstances and experience entirely different realities. They are not observing the same field. They are activating different regions of it through focus. The quantum field is not collapsed by effort. It is collapsed by orientation. Attention is orientation. When you look at something with expectation, with fear, with certainty, or with doubt, you are not just seeing it. You are informing it. You are telling the field which version of that thing you are available to experience. And the field, being responsive rather than authoritative, complies. This is where most timelines are chosen unconsciously. Not through dramatic decisions, but through habitual attention. What you repeatedly notice becomes familiar. What becomes familiar becomes stable. And what becomes stable appears inevitable. This is how lives seem to just happen to people. Not because they are powerless, but because their observation has been running on default. The field does not distinguish between deliberate focus and assumed focus. It responds to both equally. Worry is attention. Anticipation is attention. Resignation is attention. Even resistance is attention. And each carries a different instruction. This is why trying to ignore something rarely works. Ignoring still references the thing being ignored. The field hears the reference, not the intention behind it. When consciousness understands this, something subtle but decisive shifts. You stop believing that reality is happening first and you are responding second. You begin to see that your relationship to experience is simultaneous. Observation and outcome arise together. There is no delay because there is no distance. The observer is already inside the equation. This does not mean you must monitor every thought. That would be another form of force. It means you recognize that attention has weight. It means you notice where your awareness naturally rests and what identity that resting place implies. The field is not asking you to control attention. It is asking you to understand it. Once this understanding lands, responsibility replaces blame. Not responsibility as burden, but as clarity. You realize that shifting a timeline does not require dramatic change. It requires different orientation. When attention moves, reality follows. Not instantly in appearance, but instantly in direction. Collapse begins the moment focus stabilizes. Like the video now as a confirmation that this recognition has landed. The quantum field does not respond to what you want. It responds to what you are. Desire is often mistaken for power, but desire is usually a signal of absence. It announces that something is perceived as missing. The field hears that absence clearly. Not as a punishment, not as resistance, but as information. And it mirrors it with precision. Being works differently. Being is coherent. Being does not ask. It assumes. Identity does not reach outward for confirmation, it radiates inward certainty. This is why two people can hold the same desire for years and experience completely different results. One is wanting from lack. The other is expressing from alignment. The field does not negotiate between the two. It reflects the state that is stable. Most effort is an attempt to compensate for identity mismatch. When you try harder, visualize longer, repeat affirmations endlessly, you are often signaling that you do not trust your state. The field reads that mistrust immediately. It does not judge it. It simply maintains the conditions that match it. Effort without coherence creates friction, not movement. Recognition changes this instantly. Recognition is not positive thinking. It is the moment you see what is already true about your relationship with reality. When identity aligns, action becomes unnecessary as a driver. Action may still occur, but it is no longer the cause. It is the effect. The field reorganizes first. Behavior follows naturally. This is why the idea of manifesting often fails. It positions the individual as separate from the field, attempting to influence something external. But the field does not need to be influenced. It needs to be matched. Identity is the matching mechanism. When who you are internally is congruent, the mirror stabilizes. Reflection becomes immediate. Wanting keeps timelines open. Being collapses them. Desire stretches possibility forward in time. Identity pulls it into the present. The field is always responding now. Delay only exists when identity is divided. When you oscillate between belief and doubt, confidence and fear, expansion and contraction, the field keeps options unresolved. Superposition persists because coherence is missing. This is not a flaw. It is a safeguard. The field does not rush collapse when the signal is unstable. It waits. And it waits perfectly. The moment stability appears, waiting ends. No negotiation. No process. No gradual convincing. Recognition closes the gap. This is why understanding at this level feels final. Not dramatic, not euphoric, but settled. Something stops searching. Something stops asking how. Identity drops into place. And when that happens, desire loses its charge. Not because the outcome is no longer wanted, but because it is no longer questioned. This closes the initiation. You are no longer looking at reality as something to persuade. You are beginning to feel it as something that responds. The field is not impressed by effort. It is aligned by coherence. And coherence is not created. It is recognized. The quantum field is not something you are inside of. It is not an environment surrounding you, nor a system you interact with from a distance. This chapter begins with a correction that changes everything. The field is inseparable from consciousness itself. There is no boundary where you end and the field begins. The idea of separation was a perceptual error, not a structural truth. When the field is treated as external, reality becomes a problem to solve. You attempt to influence it, adjust it, persuade it. You look for methods, techniques, leverage. But when the field is recognized as a mirror, the entire orientation shifts. A mirror does not need to be controlled. It needs to be understood. It reflects automatically. Instantly. Faithfully. The quantum field is a responsive surface that reveals state, not intention. It does not respond to what you think should happen. It responds to what is happening within you right now. This is why separation was such a costly illusion. It made you believe reality was slow, stubborn, or indifferent. In truth, it has always been intimate. Immediate. Precise. Non-separation does not mean oneness as a concept. It means simultaneity. Inner state and outer experience arise together. The field does not wait for signals to travel. There is no transmission delay because there is no distance. Consciousness and its reflection are part of the same movement. The mirror shifts the moment the face changes. This is why effort feels exhausting. Effort assumes distance. It assumes something must cross space to produce an effect. But when the field is recognized as inseparable, effort collapses into alignment. You do not push a mirror to change your reflection. You change your posture. The mirror follows. The living nature of the field is often misunderstood. It is not alive in a biological sense, but it is responsive, adaptive, and ordered. It organizes experience according to coherence. When inner signals conflict, the reflection appears fragmented. When inner signals stabilize, the field resolves cleanly. Chaos and order are not imposed from outside. They emerge from state. This reframing dissolves the idea of manipulation. You are not here to bend reality. You are here to see how intimately it is already responding. The field does not need to be accessed. It is already active. It does not need to be activated. It is already reflecting. The only variable has ever been clarity. When non-separation is felt rather than understood, responsibility becomes natural. Not as pressure, but as awareness. You realize there is nothing to fight, nothing to convince, nothing to overcome. There is only state. And state is always accessible in the present moment. This recognition deepens trust, not belief. Trust that reality is not lagging behind you. Trust that feedback is immediate, even if interpretation is delayed. Trust that what you experience is not random, but relational. The mirror has never been broken. It has only been misunderstood. As this settles, the need to look outward for confirmation begins to fade. You are no longer trying to reach the field. You are beginning to feel it as your own responsiveness made visible. And once that is seen, the question is no longer whether reality is listening. The question becomes what you are silently saying. Emotion is not a reaction to reality. It is the mechanism through which reality takes form. Long before events appear, emotion is already instructing the field. Not through intensity, but through frequency. Emotion is the language the quantum field understands because emotion is state made felt. And the field always responds to state. Thoughts describe possibilities. Emotion selects them. You can think something endlessly without movement, but the moment emotion stabilizes, probability reorganizes. This is why emotion carries more creative power than intention. Intention is directional. Emotion is decisive. It collapses. Expansion and contraction are not psychological labels. They are navigational signals. Expansion indicates coherence between identity and perception. Contraction indicates misalignment. Neither is wrong. Neither is a failure. They are feedback. The field uses emotion to communicate how closely your state matches what you are selecting. When emotion expands, the field opens pathways. Synchronicities increase. Friction decreases. Time feels cooperative. When emotion contracts, the field constricts. Resistance appears. Delay becomes noticeable. This is not punishment. It is calibration. The field is not judging emotion. It is responding to it with exact correspondence. Most people attempt to bypass emotion, believing it interferes with clarity. In truth, emotion is clarity. Suppressing emotion does not neutralize instruction. It distorts it. The field still receives the signal, but the signal becomes mixed. This is how timelines remain unresolved. Not because emotion exists, but because it is resisted. Allowing emotion does not mean indulging it. It means letting it complete its informational cycle. Emotion moves like a current. When it is allowed, it passes quickly and cleanly. When it is resisted, it stagnates. This stagnation is often mistaken for fate. It is not fate. It is unprocessed instruction repeating itself. Emotion is how identity communicates with the field without words. You do not need to explain yourself to reality. You feel your state, and the field translates it instantly. This is why forcing positive emotion never works. Forced emotion carries contraction beneath it. The field reads the contraction, not the performance. When you understand this, emotional awareness replaces emotional management. You stop trying to feel something specific and start listening to what is already present. Expansion becomes guidance. Contraction becomes information. Both are useful. Both are precise. Neither needs correction. Timeline collapse accelerates when emotion and identity align. When what you feel matches who you are being, the signal stabilizes. The field no longer needs to keep multiple outcomes available. Selection becomes clean. Reality responds without hesitation because instruction is clear. This is why emotional honesty is power. Not dramatic honesty, but quiet recognition. You do not need to change how you feel to collapse a timeline. You need to understand what your feeling is saying. The moment that understanding lands, emotion shifts naturally. And when emotion shifts, collapse follows. Comment with the words, "I am ready," to anchor this timeline. Forcing fractures reality because it introduces contradiction into the signal being sent to the field. Effort is not inherently wrong, but effort applied for misalignment carries tension. That tension is read by the field as instability. When the signal is unstable, collapse is delayed. Not as resistance, but as protection. The field does not finalize outcomes when the instruction is conflicted. Control assumes that something is out of place. It assumes reality must be managed, corrected, or overridden. This assumption becomes part of the signal. The field reflects it by presenting more conditions that appear to require control. Not as punishment, but as coherence. Reality mirrors the belief that reality is untrustworthy. Allowing works because it removes contradiction. Allowing is not inaction. It is alignment with the current that is already moving. When you allow, you stop sending mixed signals. You are no longer saying, "This must change," while simultaneously broadcasting doubt. The signal simplifies. The field responds by simplifying the path. This is why forcing often produces partial results. Some movement occurs, but it comes with friction, exhaustion, or instability. The outcome arrives, but it does not stabilize. The timeline remains fragile because the identity that produced it is still divided. The field keeps adjusting because coherence was never established. Forcing also creates delay by anchoring attention in the future. Effort is often fueled by the belief that the present is insufficient. That belief becomes part of the instruction. The field responds by maintaining the sense of not yet. The more you push, the more the timeline stretches forward, not because the field resists, but because it is matching the assumption embedded in the push. Allowing collapses timelines because it is rooted in present coherence. When you allow, you are not waiting for reality to become acceptable. You are meeting it fully. This present stabilizes identity. And when identity stabilizes, the field no longer needs to keep outcomes open. Selection becomes immediate. This does not mean you stop acting. It means action arises from alignment rather than compensation. Aligned action feels obvious. It does not carry urgency. It does not seek reassurance. It moves without tension. The field responds differently to this kind of movement because the signal behind it is clean. There is no moral hierarchy here. Forcing is not bad. Allowing is not virtuous. They are structural states. One introduces noise. The other reduces it. The field always prefers clarity because clarity allows collapse without distortion. When you understand this, self-blame dissolves. You see that struggle was not a personal failure, but a mechanical mismatch. You stop trying to overpower reality and begin listening for coherence. This listening is not passive. It is precise. It is responsive. The moment forcing ends, flow does not need to be created. It reappears. It was never absent. It was obscured by interference. And when interference clears, reality reorganizes naturally. Not dramatically. Not instantly visible. But decisively. This completes the mechanics. You now see that the field does not reward effort. It reflects state. And the most powerful state is the one that no longer argues with what is already moving. Time does not move forward, even though experience appears to. This must be stated clearly before anything else can make sense. What you call time is not a river carrying you from past to future. It is a field of simultaneous potentials, all existing now. Movement through time is not motion through minutes, but movement through states of being. This is not a metaphor. It is the structure of how reality organizes itself. Timelines are not created one after another. They already exist as parallel expressions of possibility. Each timeline represents a coherent version of reality that becomes accessible when identity aligns with it. You do not travel to a future. You tune into a state. And the moment that state stabilizes, the corresponding timeline becomes what you call now. This is why waiting has never worked. Waiting assumes time must pass before change can occur. But if time were the mechanism, effort and patience would always be rewarded. Instead, reality responds inconsistently to waiting because waiting does not alter state. It only prolongs identification with a present that is perceived as incomplete. The field reflects that perception by keeping the desired timeline out of reach. Movement happens when state changes. When identity shifts, perception shifts, and with it, the apparent position in time. This is why sudden breakthroughs feel like time jumps. Nothing gradual occurred externally. Internally, coherence snapped into place. The field responded by presenting a different sequence of events, one that had always been available. Past and future are not locations. They are interpretations applied to memory and anticipation. The past is a stabilized narrative. The future is an imagined extension. Neither has creative power. Creation happens only in the present moment, because only the present contains state. And state is the selector. When consciousness understands this, regret loses its grip. You are not bound by what happened before, because what happened before does not exist as a force. It exists as a pattern you may or may not continue to identify with. The moment identification changes, the relevance of the past dissolves. The field does not carry history forward unless identity insists on it. Similarly, anxiety about the future loses its urgency. The future is not approaching you. You are not moving toward it. You are selecting among possibilities that are already complete. Fear only indicates misalignment with the state you are imagining. It is feedback, not prophecy. Timelines remain parallel until identity chooses. Choice here does not mean decision. It means resonance. The timeline that matches your state becomes visible. Others fade into background noise. This is why reality can feel narrow or expansive depending on inner coherence. Narrow identity collapses options. Expanded identity reveals them. Understanding time this way removes pressure. There is no rush, because nothing is running out. There is no lag, because nothing needs to catch up. There is only alignment. And alignment is always available now. When you stop treating time as something that moves, you stop chasing outcomes. You begin stabilizing states. And when state stabilizes, movement happens on its own. Not forward, not backward, but inward. Into coherence. Into selection. Into the timeline that was never missing, only unmatched. Collapse is instant when identity is stable because the field no longer receives mixed instructions. Instability does not slow reality down. It keeps it undecided. When identity oscillates, the field maintains multiple outcomes simultaneously, not as confusion, but as accuracy. Superposition is not a mystery. It is a mirror of inner inconsistency. Most people experience delay not because they are doing something wrong, but because they are being many things at once. One part expects change. Another doubts it. One part feels ready. Another part is attached to familiarity. Each of these states broadcasts a signal. The field receives them all. With no dominant coherence, it holds the options open. Stability does not mean certainty in thought. It means consistency in being. Identity becomes stable when self-recognition stops shifting. When you no longer define yourself differently depending on circumstances, validation, or mood, the signal simplifies. The field responds to the simplest signal first. Not because it is easier, but because it is clearer. This is why collapse can appear sudden after long periods of stagnation. Nothing new was added. Something stopped fluctuating. Identity locked into place. The field, no longer needing to hedge between possibilities, resolved the outcome immediately. From the outside, it looks like a breakthrough. From the inside, it feels like relief. Superposition persists when identity is conditional. When you believe you are confident only if results appear, or worthy only if circumstances improve, the signal remains unstable. The field reflects this by keeping outcomes provisional. It is not withholding. It is matching. Stability emerges when identity is no longer negotiated with reality. When you stop checking whether it is working. When you stop adjusting who you are based on feedback. This does not require effort. It requires recognition. You recognize yourself as the state you are choosing, not the one you are reacting from. Once identity stabilizes, emotion follows. Emotion no longer spikes and crashes. It settles. Expansion becomes the baseline. Contraction still appears, but it passes quickly because it is no longer reinforced by doubt. The field responds to this steadiness with immediacy. Reflection accelerates because instruction is uninterrupted. This is the difference between hoping and knowing. Hope keeps timelines open. Knowing collapses them. Knowing does not mean predicting outcomes. It means resting in coherence regardless of appearance. The field responds to that rest as certainty. Identity stability also explains why forcing becomes unnecessary at this stage. Force is often an attempt to compensate for inner fluctuation. When stability is present, there is nothing to compensate for. Action may still occur, but it is no longer loaded. It moves cleanly. The field mirrors this cleanliness. Collapse is not dramatic. It is efficient. It does not announce itself. It reveals itself through simplicity. Less resistance. Fewer detours. Clearer sequences. Reality stops testing because there is nothing left to test against. When you understand this, patience transforms. You are no longer waiting for something to happen. You are stabilizing who you are. And once that stabilization completes, time becomes irrelevant. The field responds not when you are ready, but when identity is done moving. Instant collapse is not rare. It is precise. It happens every time coherence replaces oscillation. And coherence is not built. It is recognized and held. Contrast is not a punishment imposed by the field. It is a clarifying response. When reality presents what you do not prefer, it is not denying you. It is showing you where alignment is incomplete or undefined. Contrast sharpens awareness by making incoherence visible. Without it, selection would remain vague. With it, direction becomes precise. Most people interpret contrast as delay or failure. They assume something has gone wrong. But contrast only appears when multiple timelines are still viable. It emerges at the edge of selection, not outside of it. The field uses contrast to highlight differences between states so identity can stabilize. It is not resistance. It is refinement. Contrast exists because consciousness learns through distinction. When everything feels the same, awareness dulls. When difference appears, attention sharpens. This sharpening is what allows identity to choose. The field does not punish uncertainty. It illuminates it. Contrast is illumination. This is why contrast often intensifies just before collapse. As identity approaches coherence, misaligned elements surface more clearly. They are not increasing. They are becoming visible. The field brings them forward so they can be released, not so they can be endured. When they are recognized, collapse accelerates. Contrast does not mean you are on the wrong path. It means the path is being defined. Every unwanted experience carries information about what you are not choosing. That information is valuable because it removes ambiguity. The clearer the distinction, the faster alignment stabilizes. When contrast is resisted, it persists. Resistance feeds the very uncertainty contrast is meant to resolve. When contrast is allowed, it completes its function. Awareness sharpens. Identity adjusts. The field responds by closing options that no longer match. Timelines narrow not through struggle, but through clarity. This is why emotional contraction often accompanies contrast. Contraction is the sensation of misalignment coming into focus. It is not a signal to retreat. It is a signal to listen. When contraction is understood, it relaxes. When it is fought, it hardens. The field mirrors whichever response is chosen. Contrast also protects against premature collapse. If collapse occurred before identity was clear, the outcome would feel unstable. The field waits until distinction is complete. Contrast ensures that when collapse happens, it holds. It is a stabilizing force, not an obstacle. There is no hierarchy of experiences here. Pleasant and unpleasant both serve alignment. The field does not prefer comfort over clarity. It responds to coherence. Contrast increases coherence by removing confusion. Once confusion dissolves, contrast fades naturally. It is no longer needed. Understanding this changes how time is experienced. Instead of interpreting contrast as setback, you recognize it as feedback. You stop asking when it will end and start noticing what it is revealing. This shifts attention from duration to direction. And direction is what selects timelines. Contrast completes the discussion of time because it explains why delay sometimes appears within a simultaneous field. Delay is not time passing. It is distinction forming. Once distinction is clear, time collapses into immediacy. The field does not linger. It resolves. Contrast sharpens. It does not punish. And once its message is received, it disappears without drama, leaving only alignment in its place. Creation only happens now. This must be understood before anything else in this phase can land. The present moment is not a slice of time between past and future. It is the only interface through which the field can be accessed. Past and future do not create. They interpret. They remember. They anticipate. But they do not select. Selection happens only here. The past exists as a stabilized interpretation. It is a pattern that was once selected and then remembered. The future exists as imagined projection, assembled from current identity and expectation. Neither has creative authority. They derive their apparent power from the present moment's state. Change the state now, and both past relevance and future trajectory reorganize automatically. This is why revisiting the past does not heal it. The past cannot be modified directly because it is not active. What changes is the identity that is referencing it. When identity shifts now, the emotional charge of the past shifts with it. The field responds by presenting different echoes. Memory softens. Meaning changes. This is not revision. It is recontextualization through present coherence. The future works the same way. Planning does not create outcomes. It creates orientation. If orientation remains hypothetical, the field keeps outcomes hypothetical. If orientation stabilizes into being, the future collapses into sequence. The present moment supplies the signal. The future supplies the reflection. Most people attempt to create by leaving the now. They try to fix the past or control the future. Both are avoidance strategies disguised as effort. The field cannot respond to avoidance because avoidance contains no stable state. It only contains movement away. The field mirrors that with delay. Presence is not stillness. It is availability. When you are present, identity is accessible. Emotion is legible. Attention is unified. The signal becomes clear. The field responds immediately at the level of structure, even if surface events take time to rearrange. Collapse begins now, not later. This is why practices that anchor attention into the present feel powerful. Not because they calm the mind, but because they stabilize identity. When identity stabilizes, instruction becomes coherent. The field no longer needs to keep options open. It resolves. Creation does not require intention in the future tense. It requires recognition in the present tense. Who are you being right now? What state is active now? What emotion is dominant now? These are not reflective questions. They are selection points. The field is responding to them continuously. When this is understood, urgency dissolves. There is no need to hurry because there is nothing ahead that is not already contained here. There is also no need to wait, because waiting implies that now is insufficient. The field reflects that implication by withholding resolution. Now is sufficient because now is active. It is the only place where identity, emotion, and attention converge. When they converge, collapse occurs. Not because you tried to make something happen, but because nothing is fragmented anymore. The present moment is not a doorway you step through. It is the ground you are standing on. Creation is not something you do here. It is what happens when you stop leaving. Recognition replaces effort the moment you see that effort was never the cause of change. Effort belongs to a model where reality is separate, delayed, and resistant. Recognition belongs to a model where reality is immediate, responsive, and precise. One pushes against the field. The other aligns with it. Only one produces clean collapse. Effort attempts to move reality by force. Recognition allows reality to reorganize itself. This difference is subtle but absolute. Effort assumes something is missing and must be supplied. Recognition reveals that nothing was missing, only misunderstood. The field responds to that revelation instantly because the signal becomes coherent. Most effort is a response to uncertainty. When you are unsure of who you are being, you try to compensate through action. You do more, think more, adjust more. But adjustment is movement without stability. The field reads this as fluctuation. It mirrors fluctuation with delay. Not as resistance, but as accuracy. Recognition stops movement internally. It is the moment you see clearly what is already true. Not conceptually, but existentially. When recognition lands, something stops negotiating. Identity settles. Emotion steadies. Attention unifies. The field responds to this unification by resolving what was previously unresolved. This is why insight often produces immediate external change. Not because insight is magical, but because it removes contradiction. Before recognition, multiple states were active. After recognition, one state remains. The field prefers singular signals. It responds to them without hesitation. Recognition does not require time. It is not built through repetition. It is not earned through struggle. It happens when resistance ends. When you stop arguing with what you are seeing. When you stop insisting on an old interpretation. The field responds to this openness by presenting a new arrangement. Doing still happens after recognition, but it is no longer heavy. Action becomes obvious rather than effortful. It does not seek validation. It does not carry urgency. It flows from clarity. The field mirrors this by reducing friction. Paths open because there is no longer inner obstruction. This is why forcing often feels exhausting. It is effort without recognition. You are trying to move outcomes without stabilizing state. Recognition feels lighter because it is not trying to move anything. It is seeing what is already in motion and aligning with it. Recognition also explains why repetition eventually fails. Repeating an action without renewed recognition only reinforces the original uncertainty. The field does not respond to repetition. It responds to clarity. Once clarity is present, repetition becomes unnecessary. When recognition replaces effort, control dissolves naturally. You no longer need to manage outcomes because you understand the relationship between state and reflection. You stop trying to convince reality and start trusting its responsiveness. This trust is not blind. It is experiential. Change becomes less dramatic but more reliable. You no longer look for signs that it is working. You notice that things are simply different. Conversations shift. Timing improves. Resistance fades. The field reorganizes quietly, efficiently, without announcement. Recognition is not a tool. It is a settling. And once it occurs, effort loses relevance. Not because nothing needs to be done, but because what needs to be done is no longer driven by lack. Reality responds not to what you push, but to what you see. And seeing clearly changes everything. When control is released, order does not disappear. It becomes visible. Control was never the source of order. It was a response to the belief that order was missing. The moment that belief relaxes, the field's inherent intelligence surfaces without effort. Not because something new arrives, but because interference ends. Control is an attempt to manage uncertainty. It arises when identity does not trust coherence to hold on its own. This distrust becomes part of the signal. The field reflects it by presenting situations that appear unstable or require constant management. Not as a test, but as correspondence. Reality mirrors the assumption that reality must be controlled. Releasing control is not surrendering responsibility. It is relinquishing interference. When control drops, identity stops bracing against the unknown. Attention softens. Emotion steadies. The signal simplifies. The field responds by reorganizing experience around this simplicity. Order emerges because there is no longer noise competing with it. The intelligence of the field is not chaotic. It is self-organizing. It arranges outcomes efficiently when left unopposed. Control interrupts this process by injecting personal timelines, expectations, and fear-based sequencing. The field then has to reconcile those demands with coherence. Delay appears not because the field is slow, but because it is integrating conflicting instructions. When control is released, resistance dissolves naturally. Resistance only exists where there is opposition. Without opposition, movement is fluid. The field does not need to push against anything. It flows. This flow is often mistaken for luck or grace. In truth, it is alignment without obstruction. Releasing control does not mean outcomes become unpredictable. They become appropriate. The field aligns results with state rather than preference. This can feel unfamiliar at first because preference is often shaped by past conditioning. But when identity is clear, appropriateness feels right. Events unfold with timing that does not need explanation. Order appears quietly. Not as dramatic resolution, but as reduced friction. Things take fewer steps. Conversations resolve faster. Opportunities align without effort. The sense of having to manage everything fades. This is not passivity. It is participation without tension. Control often masquerades as strength. But real strength is coherence. When identity is coherent, there is nothing to control against. The field reflects this by stabilizing conditions. Instability loses relevance because there is no internal instability to mirror. This is why releasing control can feel unsettling at first. The mind expects chaos. It has learned to associate control with safety. But safety does not come from management. It comes from alignment. When alignment is present, safety is inherent. The field does not threaten coherence. It supports it. As control releases, trust does not need to be cultivated. It appears on its own. Trust is the sensation of noticing that reality responds intelligently without supervision. Once this is seen, control becomes unnecessary rather than forbidden. Order was never absent. It was obscured by effort. When effort dissolves, order reveals itself. Not as something imposed from above, but as the natural consequence of coherence restored. The field has always known how to arrange itself. It was only waiting for you to stop interrupting. You are not a person inside the field. This is the realization everything has been leading toward. You are the awareness through which the field collapses into experience. The idea of being a manifester was a transitional identity, useful only until this recognition arrived. Now it dissolves. What remains is not a role, but a position of being. Awareness does not act. It does not strive. It does not manipulate. It selects by existing. Timelines do not respond to effort because awareness does not operate through effort. They respond to presence. To identity. To the quiet fact of what is being expressed as reality through perception. When you believed yourself to be a person inside the field, you tried to influence outcomes from within the simulation. You attempted to adjust conditions, predict reactions, control sequences. But awareness was never meant to manage the field. It was meant to illuminate it. And illumination collapses possibility into experience automatically. This is why the most profound shifts occur without struggle. Awareness does not push timelines into place. It stands as the vantage point from which one timeline becomes visible and all others fade. Selection happens through resonance, not choice. The timeline that matches awareness stabilizes. The rest lose relevance. You have always been doing this. Every moment of your life has been a demonstration of this law. The only difference now is that it is conscious. Before, selection felt accidental. Now, it feels precise. Not because you are controlling outcomes, but because you are no longer misidentified. The identity of the manifester implied effort. It implied technique. It implied that something had to be done to reality. That identity was useful when separation felt real. But now it becomes friction. Awareness does not need tools. It does not need methods. It does not need improvement. It only needs to be recognized as what you are. When this lands, the sense of pressure disappears. There is no longer a need to get it right. Awareness cannot fail at being awareness. Timelines do not judge awareness. They reflect it. And reflection is immediate. This does not remove individuality. It contextualizes it. Personality becomes an expression, not an identity. Experience becomes a display, not a test. You still participate, but without the weight of authorship. Reality unfolds through you, not because of you. Selection now feels natural. Not dramatic. Not effortful. You notice which experiences feel coherent and which do not. Awareness leans without pushing. The field responds without delay. This is not control. It is correspondence. When you are awareness, nothing needs to be forced. Nothing needs to be protected. Nothing needs to be chased. Timelines arrange themselves around clarity. Identity no longer fluctuates because it is no longer borrowed from circumstances. This is the pivot point. Not into power, but into simplicity. Not into doing, but into being. You are not here to make reality happen. You are here as the awareness through which reality resolves itself. Once this is seen, the question is no longer how to select a better timeline. The question dissolves. Selection is already happening. And now, you finally know from where. Nothing needs to change to shift everything because change was never the lever. Misidentification was. The paradox resolves the moment you see that reality reorganizes itself automatically once you stop mistaking yourself for something you are not. When awareness is no longer filtered through a false center, the field responds without instruction. Not because you asked, but because the signal corrected itself. Effortlessness is often misunderstood as doing nothing. In truth, effortlessness is the absence of internal contradiction. When identity is misidentified, effort feels necessary because something feels out of place. You attempt to fix circumstances, adjust behavior, or manage outcomes to restore coherence. But coherence cannot be produced from the outside. It emerges when misidentification ends. The moment you stop believing you are a fragment inside reality, reality stops fragmenting around you. This is not symbolic. It is structural. The field reflects identity, not intention. When identity relaxes into awareness, reflection stabilizes. External conditions reorganize because the reference point has changed. Nothing external needs to be corrected because nothing external was wrong. What appeared wrong was the relationship between awareness and experience. Once that relationship clarifies, the need for correction dissolves. Reality does not resist clarity. It responds to it. This is why shifts can feel anticlimactic. There is no dramatic intervention. No grand gesture. Things simply begin to work differently. Timing improves. Friction decreases. Opportunities align without effort. The mind expects struggle because struggle was familiar. When struggle disappears, the absence feels strange at first. Effortlessness is not passivity. Life continues to move. Decisions are made. Actions occur. But they are no longer compensatory. They are no longer attempts to fix an internal mismatch. They arise naturally from coherence. The field mirrors this by reducing resistance. Misidentification creates noise. Identity fluctuates. Emotion spikes. Attention scatters. The field responds with complexity. When misidentification ends, noise drops. Identity stabilizes. Emotion settles. Attention clarifies. The field responds with simplicity. This simplicity feels like flow, but it is simply the absence of interference. Nothing needs to change because change is a consequence, not a cause. When awareness rests as itself, the correct timeline is already selected. The field begins arranging events to match that selection. You do not need to monitor this process. Monitoring implies doubt. Doubt reintroduces misidentification. This is why chasing improvement often delays resolution. Improvement implies inadequacy. The field reflects that implication faithfully. When improvement drops, adequacy stabilizes. Reality adjusts accordingly. Effortlessness does not mean nothing happens. It means nothing is forced. The difference is subtle but absolute. Forced movement carries tension. Natural movement carries ease. The field responds to ease by opening pathways that tension could not access. When misidentification ends, everything appears to change even though nothing was altered directly. This is the paradox. The shift occurs at the level of reference, not content. Change follows automatically because reflection must update when the source does. This realization removes urgency. There is nothing to chase. Nothing to repair. Nothing to earn. The timeline you are aligned with does not require effort to maintain. It requires only that you do not abandon clarity. Once this is seen, effort no longer feels noble. It feels unnecessary. And in that unnecessary space, reality finally has room to reorganize itself completely. The collapse is already complete. Not because something dramatic happened, but because recognition has already occurred. The moment awareness saw itself clearly, the selection was made. Everything that followed was simply rearrangement. There is no future collapse coming. There is only the unfolding of what has already been resolved. This is difficult for the mind to accept because the mind expects sequence. It looks for confirmation, milestones, visible proof. But collapse does not announce itself through spectacle. It announces itself through certainty. A quiet knowing replaces seeking. A sense of finality appears without excitement. Something stops asking what comes next. When recognition happens, identity stabilizes permanently. Not rigidly, but conclusively. There is no return to the old reference point because it is no longer believable. You cannot unsee what you have seen. You cannot pretend separation after coherence. The field responds to this immediately by reorganizing probability. Events begin to line up not because you are directing them, but because there is no longer interference. The experience of still waiting is only the echo of habit. The body and mind may continue patterns briefly, but the instruction has already changed. The field does not wait for behavior to catch up. It responds to identity first. The rest is inertia unwinding. This is why chasing signs becomes irrelevant. Signs were useful when identity was unstable. They provided reassurance. But once recognition is complete, reassurance is unnecessary. The need to check disappears. You are no longer evaluating whether the timeline is correct. You are living from it. Completion does not feel like arrival. It feels like release. Pressure dissolves. Urgency fades. The compulsion to improve or fix quiets down. Life does not stop, but it moves differently. Less friction. Fewer detours. Clearer sequences. Things fall away without effort because they are no longer matched. The collapse being complete does not mean everything appears perfect. It means everything appears coherent. Challenges may still arise, but they no longer destabilize identity. They are contextual. Informational. They do not threaten alignment because alignment is no longer conditional. This is where most teachings end, because there is nothing left to add. No next technique. No higher level. No further instruction. The field does not need to be worked with anymore. It is already responding. The role of awareness is simply to remain what it has recognized itself to be. Remaining does not require effort. Effort would imply doubt. Remaining is natural because it is already the case. You are not holding a state. The state is holding itself. From here, reality continues to unfold, but without seeking. Without pressure. Without the need to explain. The collapse did not happen in the future. It happened the moment recognition landed. Everything else is alignment catching up to clarity. Nothing more is required. Nothing more is coming. The shift has already occurred. If you are aligned with this recognition, subscribe and share this with someone who needs to hear it before their timeline closes.